Okay, folks, welcome. Good morning. We're going to get started in 60 seconds. And yes, of course, there are some seats available up front. So if you can take a seat, grab a cup of Joe or whatever else you like to drink, we'll be getting started momentarily. All right, this is the time. We're starting. It's June 3rd, 2020. Great day. Sun is trying to break through. Last night, at least here in New Jersey where I live, there was a nice thunderstorm. Haven't seen one of those in a while, but everything looks clear. You guys need to go out today and stretch your legs, get some fresh air, maybe do something fun, but obviously wait until after this webinar. You're here today to hear Preparing for COVID-19 Recovery, what not-for-profits can do now, part 2. So we got something old, something new, something borrowed. Unfortunately, I have nothing blue except the slides. That could be debated if that's really blue. So this is a slide in which we talk about our disclaimer. Yes, we're providing this information for you as general guidance only. So it doesn't constitute provision of legal advice, tax advice, accounting services, investment advice, or professional consulting of any kind. So what we'd like to say to you is to consult your professional advisor on any specific situations that you're in, and obviously we'd be happy to talk to you as well. There is ways to get in touch with us, as you well know, but we're not, we're telling you, listen, we're providing you good information, but to put it into practice, you need to walk through it with some other people, and happy to help there. All right, this is the very first time we're offering CPE to those people who want CPE. If you don't know what CPE is, you probably don't really want it or need it, but it's continuing professional education, especially to those of you out there who are part of the CPA world. You know that you're required every year to get a certain number of credits for your license, as well as for different memberships in the AICPA, New Jersey State Society, and other groups like that. So this is my part. I'm telling you this so that you know how you can get CPE. This is really important if you really want it. First, there are going to be, the first requirement is that you gotta stay. You gotta stay on, and we know when you leave. So don't try to sneak out. We know when you leave, so you need to stay on for the entire webinar. Don't leave. Second, there are going to be 4 polling questions. You need to answer at least 75% of the 4 polling questions. And if I do my math right, if there's 4, that means you have to at least answer 3. We don't care how you answer them. In some cases, in fact, in all cases, there's no real right answer, but you need to answer them. And I'll be reminding you throughout this that if for whatever reason you click and it doesn't click through, you need to hit escape and then you can click through. But we will also be monitoring those of you taking the polling questions. And last, there is in the handout section a participant evaluation. You need to complete that participant evaluation, send it to the email address that is specified in that participant evaluation, and then, thank God, in a few days, you'll get your CPE. This particular webinar, you're entitled to 1 full, and that's 1-0, full credit of CPE. Hooray, okay. So those are the things you need to know. Here's today's presenters, myself, Todd Polinack, Carl Van Duzen, who is kind of new on this slide. He is the president of S2 Solutions, which is a new joint venture that we've launched that we're going to tell you a little bit about. Al Traverso, who's one of my partners, and Marcus White. You know, we talked a little bit about substituting these pictures with Muppet pictures. I know for sure that I would be Kermit. If anyone wants to know why, we could talk about that offline. Al, I think that you might be Fozzie Bear. And Carl, I think looking through the Muppet slides, you might be either Dr. Bunsen Honeydew or Chip the IT guy. You might be Chip the IT guy. Marcus, I'm sorry, I don't know who you'd be among the Muppets. Maybe you can tell me that later, but one day we're going to substitute Muppet pictures because we're trying to keep this fresh. So, like I said, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Today's topic points for not-for-profits, what you should be doing now as we're looking at the recovery. We're giving you the introduction. We're going to be spending some time on leveraging technology, which my partner Carl will be talking about how to use technology to your advantage. Managing cash flow. We talked about this last time. Al is going to bring you up to date on some refreshers on what you should be thinking about on cash flow. The new topic, office considerations for reentry. Be interesting to see how many people are in their offices or what the plan is to get back in. Tax planning opportunities. My good friend and partner, Marcus White, and then an open discussion. By the way, folks, you can submit questions in our open discussion, depending on what questions come through and the amount of time. We'll be taking questions. If not, I have some things to share with you. So I think we're going to our very first poll question. Poll question number one, and Maggie, who's controlling everything, is setting that out there. So the question is, which panelist is a certified Microsoft professional? So select one. And by the way, if you really want to do these polling questions, but you really don't want the CPE, you can do the polling questions anyway. So we have, now organizers and panels, you don't vote. So don't vote, guys. But you have 30 seconds to pick. And I am looking to see how many people have picked. We have 30 seconds. And looks like there's a countdown here. Wow. Okay, so which of the four, Todd, Al, Carl, or Marcus, is a certified Microsoft professional? And it's collecting it right now. Looks like a lot of you guys are voting. You must really be interested in the answer to this. And okay, anytime you want, you can release the results. All right, here's the results. So 18% of you said it was moi, me. 24% said it was Al. And 46% said it was Carl. And 12% said it was Marcus. Well, I would figure that you would think Carl, the IT guy, is a certified Microsoft professional. And he may well be, but the right answer, at least for this question, is me. I am a certified Microsoft professional. So if you definitely need some help with that, do not ask me, because I am certified in Microsoft. I think it was Microsoft 95, so it's quite outdated. So with no further ado, I am going to turn this over to my partner, Carl, who's going to talk to us about leveraging technology during our road to economic recovery. Take it away, Carl.
Thank you very much, Beaker, or Todd, I guess it might be called. I think I'll probably highlight that I'm probably the real Microsoft certified engineer in the room, but I'll give you the moment. So thank you, Todd, appreciate it. My name is Carl Van Duzen. As Todd has mentioned, I am the president of a joint venture that Saks and Safari Solutions have ventured into very recently. That joint venture is called S2 Solutions. The reason for the venture is to be able to allow the approach that Saks takes with its customers and clients to be able to be paired with the same approach that Safari Solution takes with its customers and clients, which is really around advising. And then after a good advising solution is detailed, we then start engaging in the right way to make it so you can ultimately be successful driving down operating costs while driving up top line performance, which is the entire engagement and the model of this joint venture. We'll drill into that a little bit as we go through this morning. Just wanted to highlight the joint venture and how we're engaging together. So before we get into the real topic of the day, there's one thing that I wouldn't be able to talk through without being remiss. So right now, it's just a quick kind of cybersecurity PSA for you. In the marketplace today, with everything that's happening in society, we have seen a massive upturn in cybersecurity intrusions. And one of the places that we've seen the biggest intrusion is inside of a function called phishing. Phishing basically masks a legitimate user from an erroneous user and makes it so the erroneous user has the ability of potentially gaining access to information, your personal information, asks you to do things via email, and puts you in a spot that you won't necessarily know that you're inside of an erroneous email or web environment. So here's just an example. As you know, today, we are all clamoring for more and more information to be able to have an understanding of how to keep our businesses, our families, all aspects of our life safe. So when you see an email like this from the CDC, you obviously assume that it's a good email. There's information in there that you want to be able to click on and go through. This email is a good email. It's an appropriate email. You can see that it comes from the cdc.gov in its email address up at the top. And then you can see that it's actually asking you to click on a link that's at cdc.gov email address. This would be an appropriate email. If you look at this email, the same email address up at the top, cdc.gov, a little bit of other information over here that you would probably pass through, and then it's asking you to go to that same URL that says cdc.gov, but down at the bottom you can see where that link is actually taking you, which is to an erroneous site. You click on that site and the site immediately starts collecting all of the contacts that are inside of your Microsoft or Google contact sheet and immediately starts then blasting your contacts with the same type of email information. And at some point in time, there's a high level of data that's been gathered from this erroneous email phishing event. And then they can use that information for a number of different things, whether it's creating a credit card account in your name, whether it's just sending out emails on your behalf, breaking into your Facebook account, a number of different things that can happen over time. So the bottom line here is few opportunities. Train your employees, train yourself. Understand that we always have to be looking at everything that's happening inside our email environment today, making sure that we're always very safe. If you have computers that you're leveraging inside of your ecosystem, make sure that you have them all protected with some level of endpoint protection. The legacy antivirus tools that are out there, like McAfee and others, are not necessarily the endpoint tool that's going to be able to ensure your absolute safety and security. So there are some advanced endpoint tools that are out there. We can talk through those at any point in time through our engagement and our advisor services together over a period of time. Make sure every worker, potentially at this point in time, has a company-owned device. The BYO environment is a great thing, but in this space right now, it might be beneficial to have the BYO space or the bring your own space now be superseded by deploying a device for every single user. The reason for that is the company then takes on a level of liability. You can control the machine a little bit better, and it allows you to have advanced threat protection on that machine that you can truly manage instead of having a BYO space be one that you don't necessarily manage every day. Provide all of your workers, if they do need to have access to in-house networks, in-house data at this point, especially in a remote worker environment, please use a VPN. A lot of you may be using remote desktops where you're actually remoting in from your home computer into another computer that's in your office and then using that computer to do your day-to-day compute needs. That type of approach is the #1 way of having your network be intruded by erroneous network intrusions. We want to try to remove that as much as possible. A VPN creates a nice tight network point-to-point connection that allows us to manage that in a way that makes it so we can ensure that intrusions don't happen. At this point, there's also the need to remove some privileges that employees may have had over time. We shouldn't have hundreds of people having admin access to your spaces and your software, we should try to make it so we remove as many of those administrative privileges as possible to make it so we can very much contain who has access to a lot of the critical information we have. There was a large customer of ours a few years ago that had a very large impactful intrusion inside of their ecosystem. The reason for it is they had 50 admin users to their Microsoft space, and one of those admin users was hacked through a phishing event, and then through that phishing event, the admin user was hacked, and the intrusion gave everybody the ability of managing all of their email and all of their data inside of their entire ecosystem, which was around 300 or so users, something that we definitely don't want to have happen. So again, removing as much of that privilege as possible is very important. Monitor your traffic. If you see your network becoming slow or sluggish, or things just don't feel like they do normally on any given day, there's probably something that's happening on your network that isn't normal, and we should definitely make sure we're doing everything possible to be proactive inside of incidents like that. Two-factor authentication, it's something that is painful from a user experience because you have to lift up your cell phone or check an email before you log into a system, but it definitely ensures that the system validation of you being the person logging in is there to make it so somebody else can't log in on your behalf. Banks do this today. I'm sure you're using that practice in other spaces. It just becomes a natural thing to evolve inside of your business space. This is an interesting one. When you're home and you're working from home now, your kids might be using your machine. Well, kids go to things that you may not want your kids going to, and then those websites create opportunity for intrusion. When you walk away from your machine, lock your workstation, make sure that you're doing everything possible to control your space as much as possible, knowing that your machine is most likely connected to your business, and your children wouldn't have necessarily the understanding of that, and with that, we want to protect as much as we can. All right, and the last one is, like I said, everything right now is all happening because of the sociological issues that we currently are inside of and the circumstances that we're inside of. Scams happen all the time. Make sure that we're doing everything possible to think before we react. Everything should be susceptible to a, is this right or wrong? Not necessarily always just clicking on it because it just seems like the easy thing to do. So always be skeptical is basically the point there. So jumping into today's topic, just a little highlight for you: working from home trends. This is what we see out in the marketplace right now, as everybody obviously is hunkered down, starting to get back to work maybe. With this, we see an interesting cultural band-aid being ripped off of the work from home environments, where we see telecommuters are actually seeing an 82% of 82% of commuters, they're actually seeing themselves being less stressed, happier to be able to be inside of their workspace, and they're actually more engaged from a day-to-day business perspective instead of less engaged. 80% report a higher level of morale. Interestingly enough, now, because there's a different level of collaboration, maybe some of the inner office things that would reduce morale are no longer inside of some people's day-to-day workspace. It's created an increase in morale. 68% of workers are actually not as connected to their workspace, but they also see that their career progression is not going to necessarily be impacted. So they're actually seeing that, yes, some days they're not actually talking to the same people that would give them the next career bump, but they're actually seeing that that's not impacting their ability of their career progression and what they're doing, most likely because their work product is now advanced and they're actually having more throughput. So they're getting the recognition without the day-to-day walking around the office. 29% of workers say that they're happy in their jobs than compared to on-site workers. So this again might be a moment in time where we think about how do we mix our workforce, some that are inside of workforce, inside of a building, and some that aren't. There might be a different way of creating a work from home and non-work from home environment that does create a positive aspect for some of our workforce. And you can see that others are willing to take a pay cut if they're able to continue to work from home. And then you also see that obviously productivity has increased, because now our work days are starting at 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever it might be, without a commute in and taking that time in the office to settle down before we start working. We're actually hitting the ground running in the morning without any issue. And then obviously working later into the day before we stop for the day to enjoy our families or whatever it might be. So just some thoughts of what's out there in the workforce right now and the trends that we're seeing. What has changed? coronavirus has made it so now security is our absolute top concern. Before, it was not necessarily the most concern. It was inside of there, it was a practice that needed to run, but now it's absolutely the most top concern that we're seeing out there in the ecosystem. We have a lot of customers and clients that are now saying, how do I just create a cybersecurity practice? I'll worry about all of the other IT initiatives later, but cybersecurity is an absolute must for a lot of users today. Remote work is here to stay. There is no way we're not going to have it be a new way of working. You're going to have a mix of some folks that'll be in the office and some folks that'll be remote. It's just going to be the way of the world. You can see it with large businesses today. Facebook announced that they're going to create a work from home environment till at least January, and then after that they're going to think about what they do from there. And some, you can see it also in the commercial space, where commercial buildings that were built for multi-floor type work environments are now being shrunk to one floor, with a half of a workforce being work from home and others that would be in the office. So all variations are happening, but it's here to stay, and we need to see that, acknowledge it, and figure out how we can change our business to do that. With that comes new styles of communication and transaction. You know, how do you communicate with your staff? How do you communicate in a way that makes it so you can be effective day to day without running into an office or standing over a cube, and do it in a way that still makes the most efficiency of day-to-day operations? Data integration is becoming even more important than ever before. Before, you could have multiple different systems with multiple different datas in all of those systems, and you could have people that were trying to crunch that data together to give you a report. Now it's more important than ever to be able to create an integrated data set to make it so you can have one place to see all aspects of your business and your operation, knowing that using individuals to be able to support integration of data may not necessarily be something that your business is able to sustain, whether it's been from having to create a reduction in force or looking to find operational efficiencies in systems that you're leveraging. Fundraising, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is going to reinvent itself. Instead of that normal hand-to-hand handshake donation, you know, event that has a lot of people inside of a room and you have a great, exciting evening, you have to do it in a different fashion. Digital and mobile is now where it's going to really come down to. That's going to be the make or break of how you create a new fundraising opportunity. And with that, you're also removing some of the boundaries associated with the states or areas that you might be fundraising in. Now you have the ability of hitting a larger group and a deeper opportunity from a donor space, and we'll talk that through. Expanding your social networks via multiple different digital mediums is going to be the way of saving on both soft cost and setting a new cadence of fundraising. Soft costs come into when you're planning a large event for a fundraising opportunity. There's obviously time taken by multiple individuals. There's opportunity to now to reuse those individuals in that time to be able to support smaller events that create the same type of fundraising opportunity, and you can do that in a more rapid fashion. We'll talk through that as well. And obviously with this comes a focus on digital transformation. We need to really look at how we transform all of our business tools and make it so we can leverage those in a digital fashion, both internally for our internal customers and employees, and also externally for the donors that we're trying to actually get into our ecosystem, or at least get them more advanced in our thinking and our mission, all part of the digital transformation and messaging that we need to basically make sure we have out there. And you can see this is the reprioritization of the technology initiatives. A few years ago, you would have seen the improving customer experience, which is 37% of the space. Now you would have seen that at the top. Most organizations were trying to figure out a way of having the user experience both internally and at their customer base being a higher level than ever before. What we've seen now is that's kind of removed itself from the top, and digital transformation, which impacts your user experience, being part of that ecosystem. So digital transformation is now the absolute #1 thought process that most CEOs and most small business owners are really starting to focus in on. Cybersecurity, which we talked about, is the #2. It is definitely top of mind as you start creating a digital platform, a digital experience. Making sure that all of the data is safe and secure inside of there is obviously critical. And then cloud computing, that's been the buzz out there for a long time. If you do transform in the digital fashion and you do it in the most elegant, scalable, cost-effective way, a cloud environment is going to be the way that is created and enabled for you. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. So here's an interesting stat here for you, that inside of the IT spend, in theory, 4.7%, rounded up to 5% of your revenue should really be around IT spend. Question is that what your spend looks like today? The analysis of that, how we create the best cost management solution for you that leverages technology but has the best in class cost is where S2 can help. We can come and sit, talk, we'll advise, we'll find some of the fragmentation inside of your ecosystem and get you inside of this spend model. The spend model can include a multitude of different things. It might include leveraging your internal IT staff in a different way. It may include leveraging the IT staff as it is, but finding more efficiencies inside of the ecosystems and the technology solutions. All variations of strategy that we can help develop and put in place for you. But you can see this is where the market trend is and the management and how the IT spend should be kind of categorized or benchmarked inside of your business and your operations. This does not remove any of the functionality, creativity, innovation that we can drive into your IT environments and your digital transformation, just because of the spend model being at about a 5% revenue model. So what is digital transformation? Digital transformation is a place that you try to leverage new technology to be able to solve for a lot of your technology problems that you may have. One of the examples is cloud computing. We talked about this a little bit, that if you are doing things in the right fashion, at some point in time, a cloud computing space is going to become part of your ecosystem. It's a space that you're able to drive down your operating costs, increase your top line performance, right size the licenses that you use, create agility in how you onboard and offboard, pay month to month with a predictable type of cost model, and not necessarily have to go for these long-term multi-year agreements that have a high level of spend that don't give you flexibility inside of that kind of contracted period. And virtual fundraising. This is another example of digital transformation that you're going to have to consume in order to make it so we can all be successful, is a virtual fundraising environment. So how do we accelerate digital transformation? So a few years ago, there were some studies done. 92% of companies prior to COVID were actually saying that, yeah, we know digital transformation is something that we actually need to do, but it's not something that's on the top level of our roadmap. We'll get there. It's a 3 to 5 year run. It's something that we'll invest in, but we'll do it in a slow period. ROI was understood, but it wasn't necessarily business critical. If we look to now with COVID and what we've dealt with through that, 100% of companies are now saying that if they do not modernize their digital space, they are not going to be able to survive. And ROI is no longer a conversation, it's an RSA, or realistic survivability. It's now about how do we survive in this new marketplace, and the only way to do that is to transform our business environments, leveraging a digital footprint to ensure that we can ultimately be successful, get to the customers, still be influential, be relevant, and not necessarily lose our marketplace inside of there. That same thinking and theory applies to the nonprofit space, knowing that we need to be relevant to the donors, to the people that are helping fund, to the constituents that we might have. Losing that relevancy, not having a digital footprint, will be created over time, and then you'll have erosion of the donor space very, very quickly. So digital transformation, we try to solve all of the problems with technology. We know that telecommuting is something that's out there. We have to leverage that space and change our thinking. We need to understand that office locations will shrink, travel will be decreased, it will never be the same as it ever was before, and employees will have at-home expenses. It's just a piece of the puzzle that we all need to know, and with that, we need to transform our digital space, knowing that these are the environments that our employees will be in, that our constituents will be inside of, and we want to make it so we can be ultimately successful in tapping them as we start evolving our new technology environments. Online services, everything is online, literally everything. I can order whatever I need online, drive up to a store, have curbside pickup, and roll away. We need to make it so that all of our services that we offer to our clients are online. Nothing is too small to present in an online fashion, whether it's asking for a donation of $1, whether it's selling a thing for 35 cents, having it online creates this level of trust, reliance, relevancy that makes it so we can absolutely be impactful to our client base as we go forward. Virtual events. This is the space that is obviously going to transform if we do this right or not right inside of the nonprofit space. Large events are no longer going to be the way of the future. It's going to be small events, webinars, environments that allow us to have a more intimate type of setting. and make sure that we can have our mission be clearly understood in a most relevant fashion. And it's not going to be in the cocktail hour that we have the conversation. It's now going to be a one-to-many type of conversation, and sometimes it might be a one-to-one in a digital fashion, and we need to create the ability of doing that. Board members and donors, leveraging them, staying in touch with them, making sure that they feel very part of the fabric of the organization is absolutely critical to ensure that you can have a digital transformation that makes sense. They become the voice, leveraging them, using their network, all things that become basically a crowdsource opportunity, all start with the board members and the donors. Hosting online events creates a level of real-time engagement. We can then have an understanding of who's interested and who's not interested, what the feedback looks like. We just ran a poll and you saw that poll have immediate input from that poll and you had learnings from there. Those are things that we can start creating inside of a digital space that gives you real-time understanding of where we want to be, what our constituents are doing, what our donors are doing, and how we can agilely create new environments to be as flexible as possible to continue to stay relevant to the marketplace. Leveraging the cloud, this is obviously just kind of table stakes in everything that we do. Business continuity, not being reliant on your building. I don't know how many of you right now are required to VPN in and get access to a server that's sitting in your building. Removing some of that reliance over time allows for a new level of flexibility, creates a new level of conversation about how business is detailed out inside of disasters, and as you agilely change your business, comes a whole new environment for you. Buy versus build, this is something that we'll talk through as we go. Really comes down to an analysis of what the unique business process is. Is it something that we can find in the marketplace and buy that tool, or is it something that's so unique that we need to build it ground up? All things that we'll talk through. And then fundraising tools, there's a lot of them out there, off-the-shelf tools that can help support an immediate here and now solution, and then you can bolt on other solutions as we go. And this space is just continuing to evolve, all driven by this COVID experience that we're all inside of. Integration is the absolute #1 key to make all this successful. You have CRM systems today, you have financial systems today, they're probably not talking to each other, and if they do, they're in manual reports or manual scheduled reports that are run overnight. Now we need to have real-time integration of that data to make it so at one button click, you can see a new donor that came in, when that donor was contacted last, and how we're actually campaigning to that donor to make it so we can have a clear understanding of our fundraising model. All aspects of a clear integration path that we can help detail as well. I'm going to pause here, throw it over to Todd for poll number 2.
Okay, poll number 2. You ready for this one? All right. Three answers to this question. Have you implemented virtual events to replace your live events in 2020? Yes, no, or we're trying. And the poll is now open for people to vote. Remember, if you're having a problem voting, hit the escape button and then try it. It should work then. I'll give you 30 seconds to do this. Yes, the votes are coming in. Very, very interesting how the vote is turning out here. All right. So that's a wrap when it comes to the poll. So we'll close the poll down. And here is the results. Well, most of you said yes. Few of you said no, and I like the people who are trying. So that's all good. So Carl, back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Todd. See if I can get things. All right. So impacting how you fundraise. How do we actually take some of the digital transformation that we've talked about and bring it into an ecosystem that makes clear sense, and we're actually having a strategy and a mission to how we're going to fundraise that is absolutely crystal clear to everybody internally and impactful to all of the donors. We have to create a very robust digital online donation process. It needs to be something that we have clearly detailed out. It's understood of all the different use cases, how you want to have donations be processed, how you want to be able to have your online presence be, ensure that it's as robust and as full as possible, knowing that the best ability of getting the biggest bang for your buck, literally and figuratively, is by creating a really rich environment that the donors will want to come to, learn from, be able to understand the mission clearly, understand the impact of the organization's mission in times like this and in other times, and make sure that they clearly understand how their donation is being leveraged. With that, we want to make sure that we have a seamless donation solution that makes it so that you can donate on any device, anywhere. We shouldn't create solutions that are only for the iPhone, not for the Android device, any variation thereof, only web-based, or the web-based solution doesn't look as good as on a mobile device. Create a responsive design that allows for any tool anywhere that's connected to the internet to be able to get your donors to the actual space that you want to leverage from a fundraising perspective and allow them to donate in a seamless, easy fashion. This is an interesting space, the access to matching gift search tools. So some companies, once you donate, you can then have that donation matched by the company that you work for. How do you create an environment that allows for an employee that's donating go and search fast, understand the company that they work for and what their donation policy and process is, and be able to then have that matching donation occur as fast as possible? All the parts of the connective tissue and the data that we want to make sure is integrated richly to make it so not only are you gaining access to that one donation, but then you're creating a connective tie to the next donation that potentially might be coming from the affiliation of that donor to their work or their network, all variations of things that we want to tie together inside of the space. Peer-to-peer fundraising, this is where we get into the virtual events. So creating smaller, intimate events that are driven by social media. It can be silly things like happy hours. I just saw a friend of mine is actually doing a social distancing competition golf challenge where he's actually on a par 3 trying to make a hole in one, and he's going to take donations for every time he hits the ball, how many times people can bet on him actually making the hole in one. Comedy hours, you can still sit in front of your TV or your computer and laugh, and while that's happening, you can donate. Online community events, those are happening all the time in real time now. You see them on Facebook and other places. All opportunities to create a donating environment that is easy to put together, they're fast to stand up, and they can happen at a cadence that could happen, bi-weekly, every Friday, some variation thereof that is just different than that one big massive event that you put on once or twice a year to try to gain as much fundraising as you possible. Now you can do it in a much more iterative fashion. Those formal large events have hard costs and soft costs, and we talked about this before. If you do this in the right space, the digital transformation is a low cost, low overhead environment to be able to go and gain those donations. So you're not necessarily having to weigh, okay, we have this large event, we had to pay X per table, Y per head, and with that we have to pay off X hard costs at the end of the event, and then taking soft costs and employees and having them not necessarily focus on their day-to-day job to focus on the planning of the event. Now you can remove all of that and make this a far more seamless, far more cost-effective engagement if you have the right digital space created. Donors and board members are the influencers. Leveraging their network allows for these peer-to-peer events to be able to become as big as possible, knowing that the donors and board members are the spot that they will spread the word, and leveraging them inside of a social media space is absolutely imperative to be able to be successful in these smaller, intimate events that we're talking about. A few tools that you could leverage to be able to schedule those social environments, those social posts. There's hundreds of them out there. These are a couple that we've seen that are kind of the best in class that are doing it the right way. It allows you to schedule those social posts in advance. It allows you to create kind of a marketing blitz about it, and people can get excited prior to the event, which obviously brings the most capacity to the event. And don't think that the young and the old aren't all interested. Bring them all to the table together. Target everyone. It's imperative to be able to use this time to be able to saturate the space with everything you're doing from a marketing perspective to get people involved, and don't feel like you need to remove some generations because of the technology that's now being leveraged. It's all easy to use if you make the transformation in the right space. Even the younger and the older generations will be able to use it seamlessly, and there shouldn't be any gap there. So the idea is to leverage the digital space in a far different fashion. To do that, you have to ensure that you're always consistent. I have this challenge internally where we start a blog and the blog lasts for 2 weeks, and then we kind of lose steam on the blog. you really need to ensure that you have invested in human employees to be able to support the consistency in a digital presence. They have to always be relevant. They have to always be churning and always be executing. You can never take your foot off the gas inside of the digital space, because people can go and see changes on every hour, every day basis, and you want to make sure that you're always being seen as relevant and not old and stale. So leveraging internal employees differently to be able to ensure that digital space is up to date is absolutely critical. And here's just a couple examples of platforms that we've seen out in the space that have done a pretty good job of being as relevant as possible in this current state. GiveSmart is an interesting environment that actually is starting to do a really robust, creating a really robust platform to allow you to ask for donations in a very unique fashion, to make it so that people can actually do things in a different fashion. Aliba is one that has an online tracking tool, some donation collections, a little bit less innovative, but still is kind of rich in how they present things. And Facebook Live is always coming up with solutions to be able to support the donation environment. And they have an open forum, so you can actually bolt on other tools to it, and you can do things in a really easy, fluid fashion, leveraging that tool as well. So some three examples. There's hundreds out there, like I said before, all things we can talk through and help advise as we move forward in things. This is a little busy of a slide, but I wanted to at least present it out. The idea of making your website as easy as possible to navigate is absolutely critical. An example over on the right-hand side is a website that's out there currently that it's very easy to create a donation. You enter in your name, some information, and then you can click on your donation immediately. You don't click on the donation button and then that takes you to PayPal or someplace else. It's all resident and local on the actual website. That's all a piece of the navigation that you want to make sure that you're not actually having people go someplace else to actually execute their donation. It all happens resident to the actual website itself. You have to make it easy for everyone to actually find what they're looking for. The minute you have somebody that has to navigate through 3 clicks, you will probably lose that donation. It needs to be a 1 click. They're into the space that actually executes the donation, and from there you gain their information and they donate. Anything further than 1 or 2 clicks, you're probably going to lose your donation. Just knowing that navigation through a site that has 3 clicks becomes not necessarily the best user experience, and there's details out there and experiential analysis that showed that. Ticket sales forms, donations pages should be embedded. I stated this a little bit ago. You never want to have somebody click on a button and go to another website and never be able to get back to your website, or click on a button and have, they call it tab out, where they all of a sudden another tab is open that you're inside of that tab doing the donation work. You'll always want it to be embedded into your website itself, so you always keep your donors and constituents local to you. All things that we can talk through, lots of tools out there. Web development is really where this comes into play. Opportunities are lost if the site is hard to navigate, irrelevant, or out of date. Keeping things relevant, keeping people excited, keeping people on your site is always part of ensuring that you have really good, intuitive, well-touched donors as you're starting to evolve inside of this digital space. User-friendly website creates and cultivates trust and relevance. If you don't have a user-friendly website, you might get the donation, but you most likely won't get a repeat. Creating that user experience that is rich will allow for a donor to trust in what they're looking at, trust in what they're donating to and for, and also create a level of relevance to the society and everything that's happening in there, and an understanding of your mission, and understanding how your mission, even in times of specifics to COVID, have impact on this nonprofit space that you might be donating to. All part of the story and the mission that you want to maintain inside of your digital space. So we know that these are key issues out there inside of the marketplace from a nonprofit space today specifically. There's a lack of resources, potentially a lack of expertise inside of all areas of technology, and it's always a struggle to try to find the resource and find the skill to be able to support executing on new initiatives. Managing your spend is obviously a critical thing that we all have to deal with, not just in the nonprofit space, but something that is obviously critical to all of us being successful. The marketplace is extraordinarily complex. Technology is changing at a rapid rate, faster than it ever has before, and all of that creates the inability of navigating through a need and being able to understand how that need is relevant today and how it's going to be relevant 5 years from now, and understanding how your spend today will not necessarily have to be the same level of spend you have to make 5 years from now. Performance and security, you always need to make sure that you're secure. And then from a performance perspective, if you do this digital transformation, right, in theory, you're going to get more and more people donating on your site. If the site is slow, if the digital tool is slow, you will probably lose the ability of having a donation either be executed or have that donor return for another donation later. And reactive activities, something happens, we react to it, we lose our focus, and we don't necessarily have the ability of ensuring that the mission, the strategy, the tool that we were trying to deploy to create a new opportunity for the business is focused in on because of a need immediately that's out there that we need to solve off for. All challenges that we see today. So how do you solve for those challenges? You bring in an advisor that has the ability of ensuring that we can help with focus. We can take some of the day-to-day operational aspects and challenges off of your plate and really focus on the critical innovation needs associated with continuing to drive your business and building that top line performance while ensuring a back-end savings. So the idea here is you find the right partner, which in our mind is S2 Solutions, and you be able to present to the partner the opportunity of becoming embedded inside of your operations to help alleviate some challenges that you may have today. This type of partnership can work side by side with your existing IT staff or technology staff. In certain cases, it actually can work side by side with your existing managed service provider. We can work inside of whatever model you may have today to be able to ensure that you're finding the right levels of efficiencies and the right level of innovation to ensure that you can be ultimately successful with the business, the innovation, the efforts, and the initiatives to be able to drive new donorship inside of a digital transformation or even just a modernization of your existing technology footprint. So how does S2 engage? We engage by first creating a connection. Obviously critical to be able to create a connection. That connection then creates our ability of working in a transparent fashion together. We assess what you have today. We assess what you have inside of your current ecosystem. We're never going to make assumptions on what we just want to lift and shift and plop something else in. We always want to understand what you have today, how we can leverage what you have today, how we can ensure that what you have, we're not necessarily having to rip out and put something else in, because from a managed cost perspective, that just doesn't make sense in anything we do. Through that understanding and that kind of creating that connection, we build trust together. We build trust and we commit, and we from that trust, we actually demonstrate our commitment and our knowledge to you. Through there gives us the ability of truly understanding how to build you a strategy. We build that strategy and then we start executing on that strategy together. And that commitment together after we built that strategy creates that nice long-term success, that predictable cost model to ensure that you can ultimately be successful inside of a flexible environment that allows you to make changes any given day as needed. And then through there, it's a nice, rich, developed relationship that is sustainable for years and years and years. And that opportunity then creates our real ability of being able to work seamlessly together, have the pulse of your business together, and ensure that as the marketplace is changing, the need to navigate through new technology is something that we're doing in a proactive fashion, not a reactive fashion, that again allows for that focus, that understanding of how to operate your business to create that top line performance, and not worried about the back-end technology that might not necessarily be able to support your overall business strategy. So the last one for me, as we start going back to the office, there's obviously things that we need to do to ensure that we can ultimately be successful. You could leverage technology, low-cost technology. It might be the way of creating some opportunities for people to understand how to get back to the office in a safe and rational fashion. I approach this slide with an SFP, is how I call it, which is safety, fact, and peace of mind. This is all about ensuring that we can be ultimately safe. We have to leverage fact to be able to support how we ensure safety. All of that creates peace of mind for our employees, for our visitors, anybody who we're trying to start engaging back with. So introduce employee visit and visitor screening. You see an example of that on the screen. A TV that somebody walks up to, it immediately takes their temperature and it gives you either a red or a green, and then from there you can be granted access to a floor, to a facility, to an event, whatever it might be. It gives an understanding what the person that's visiting the space may or may not be or have. Identify all points of entry. The last thing you want to do is have, the person that's delivering mail or a package come through a back door and not necessarily go through the same screening process. We want to make sure that everybody follows that same screening. And also at times we may want to reduce the points of entry to make it so we can have one funnel place for everybody to come and go from. When you leverage technology, you want to make sure that you're leveraging it in a way that allows you to be as flexible and scalable as possible, right? You don't want to put something in place that you can't necessarily repeat. You want to make sure that you can repeat it as you start opening more and more offices or opening more and more spaces, doors, et cetera. You want to make sure that you can just scale this solution without having to create a Herculean effort to deploy the technology. And one of the critical pieces as we start looking at how we screen individuals as they're entering the space, through this, we're going to be capturing personal identified information, whether it's their picture, whether it's information about them, name, first name, last name, who they're visiting, et cetera. All of those things we need to be very careful of where we capture that information, how we're storing that, how long it stays inside of our ecosystem to make sure that we're dealing with all the privacy laws and supporting them in the most proactive fashion possible. As we start looking at putting systems like this in place, integrate those systems instead of having it just be a one-off system that somebody at the front desk or somebody in the access point is looking at. Have it be integrated. It could be integrated into your business building access systems. So once they see a green temperature reading, the building access opens up, the key card can work again. All variations of integration that happen here. If somebody is flagged for having a high temperature in this use case, how does human resources have an understanding of that? What's the liability that happens now this person's been flagged? What do you do from a business perspective? All things that need to be thought of and integrated to, and we can help with all of that. So with that, I'm going to stop, take a very deep breath. I'm going to pass it back over to my friend Todd, and we can continue on with the webinar.
Thank you, El Presidente. So I'm going to turn this back over to Al, managing cash flow. We're going to do some things we spoke about in the past as kind of a refresher. Al, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, just to touch on, again, some of the key things that I think not-for-profits are concerned about these days. As always, cash flow is important. Cash is king, as the saying goes. So having the ability to be able to estimate your cash flows is critical. Historical financial statements, they just tell you the story of where you've been. But when you think about cash flow, I like to think of it as it's a way to anticipate the future and predict the future as to where cash balances are going to be a week from now, 3 weeks from now, 2 months from now. That is critical information that not-for-profits need in order to be able to anticipate issues and understand what their needs are beyond just today and looking forward. And some key inputs that you need to have an understanding about are the inflows and the outflows. That is the key to cash flow. So certainly understanding the inflows, where the dollars are coming from, what's that frequency of the dollars coming in. If you're on a fee-for-service model, certainly your billing practices are going to be critical in how often you're billing and all of the policies surrounding the billing function, making sure that you've eliminated bottlenecks as well as errors in your billing capabilities so that you reduce the amount of rework and rebilling for dollars that you are seeking to collect. If you're on the cost reimbursement model, again, it's important to understand where your spend is coming from and how frequently you can request reimbursement. I think here in New Jersey, most folks, the traditional model is it's a once a month from the funding agency, but there are certainly a number of other grants where the frequency for billing for cost reimbursement could be more frequent than just once a month. So understanding those flows and certainly understanding in this environment that we're in, if you're on the fee-for-service model, if your billing frequency and your contact with consumers has been impacted, looking at what are those trends and what's your capacity to actually bill and generate the revenues. That's a key factor that needs to be built into the cash flow model. One thing when it comes to forecasting cash flow, it is not an exact science. It is based on some assumptions, educated assumptions. And one of the key things is to constantly reevaluate where your forecast was, where you actually ended up, and looking at what are those variances, what's causing those variances, and rework the model so that you keep sharpening the pencil as you're moving forward. And the last point here is, of course, no matter how much cash flow modeling you do, cash flow forecasting cannot fix any fundamental issues just with revenues being out of sync with expenses. So not-for-profits, this is the time, if you haven't done so already, obviously looking at those budgets, revising those cash flow models, certainly seeking budget modifications for funders. A lot of additional spend is out there now related to COVID-19, keeping the office environment safe, keeping your consumers safe, keeping your employees safe. A lot of additional spend that was not anticipated and in the original budgets. So certainly if you are on a cost reimbursement and have an opportunity to seek budget modifications, not-for-profits should be seeking to do that immediately. Speak with your funders and see what the opportunity is there for that. Look at your current budget, and if you're revising your budget, certainly having some thought as to what if scenarios, will we ever get back to a normal? Normal will probably be something different than what it was before COVID-19. And certainly having plans in place to have those what if scenarios. What if something else were to occur? What would the plan be? Looking at what those potential options would be is certainly part of your overall planning and strategy going forward. And of course, looking at your programs and the breakdown of your programs, which ones are generating those surpluses versus which ones are generating deficits. So sources of finance, again, Carl had mentioned this earlier and alluded to it as part of the fundraising capabilities, but look to your board members, look to your stakeholders, look at your lines of credit, and also don't forget about the PPP. This is, all part of managing the cash flow. And in terms of the PPP loan, if there are entities that have not gone for it, the good news is the funding is still there. The program has not run out. So that's important. And then with the PPP, seeking forgiveness will be the next task, and we could certainly help you with that if you do have questions. So Todd, I'm going to put that back to you before we move on to our next topic.
Okay, this is poll number 3. Okay, folks, have you experienced increased efficiencies created by working remotely? Yes, no, not really sure. And here's your chance. Polling is now open and start. Remember, if for whatever reason you're not sending it in, it's because you need to press escape. Okay, votes are coming in. This is very exciting. Efficiencies. Have you had efficiencies? Yes, no, I don't know. Not really sure. See who is winning at this point. Okay, so the answer is most people have said yes. Some people have said no. 24% have said no, and some of you don't really know. I guess it's too soon to know. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my friend Al to keep talking about workplace considerations.
Okay, thanks, Todd. So just some thoughts here on workplace considerations. Certainly every not-for-profit is in some different stage of either reopening the office, or perhaps maybe you never really closed, but you had a partial shutdown. But certainly the considerations, I think, the three main topics here, it's the people, right? It's our employees, as well as our consumers that we're servicing. It's the place, it's the work environment, and making sure that we're doing everything we can there to make sure that it is a safe environment. And then, of course, what are the new policies? What are the new processes? Things that are being implemented, going to be implemented, in order to make sure that we maintain safety for all parties involved. I think the key thing that we need to consider is communicate, and how we're going to communicate to these policies to our employees. What are those things that the not-for-profit is doing to make sure that the work environment is safe? Workplace entry screening was talked about a little bit earlier. And what is that going to look like? How often are you going to screen? Is it going to be daily for employees? How are you going to screen visitors when they come in? Certainly ensuring social distancing within the workplace, that is going to be a challenge. But perhaps there are some things that could be done, such as maybe changing the office layout. And if that's not a possibility, staggering, perhaps scheduling of which employees come on what days, perhaps alternating days, or working out a schedule so that the office is never at necessarily 100% capacity, where people are now closer than 6 feet or getting too close. So those types of policies should be considered. The cleaning and the disinfection of the workplace, how often is that cleaning going to happen? Where are you going to be cleaning? What's going to be the areas that are concentrated on? And of course, how does an entity respond to suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases? All of this, the employees need to understand so that they feel safe returning to the workplace. Certainly that is the key here. It's all about the safety of the employees as well as the consumers. Not-for-profits will need to make sure that they are communicating and have updated their leave of absence policies for employees. With that, you probably want to consult with certainly your HR department, or perhaps even a labor attorney, to make sure that the policies are appropriate given the current work environment. Workplace accommodations, I think part of that is technology, as Carl had mentioned and spoke about. Thinking about what are those accommodations that the not-for-profit will need to do and would be willing to do in order to ensure that they retain their workforce, which they so desperately need. Any regulatory and legal compliance issues certainly need to be considered. And how do employees, what is the policy, and how do employees raise their questions or concerns with management so that those concerns do get addressed in a timely manner? Again, all about maintaining the employees' confidence and safety in the workplace. And certainly cleaning stations throughout the office, and encouraging proper hygiene and good practices there. Entry screening, I think these are the three most important questions before visitors are coming in and you're letting folks into your home, as it were. The three most important questions about, have you tested positive or experienced any symptoms in the past 14 days? Have you been in contact? Or, of course, question 3, have you traveled anywhere recently to any of the areas that would be considered a high-risk area? And the last points here, really, it's just, this is an opportunity. It's not all doom and gloom that we're in. There is a lot of opportunity to reimagine the workplace, to make new plans, to really revitalize an organization. And certainly, I think the benefits of technology are going to be key to bringing back the office. And with that, Todd, thank you.
Okay, well, Al, thank you. So I'm going to turn this back over, or actually I'm going to turn it over to Marcus to give us a quick update on tax planning opportunities for tax exempts. Marcus?
Good morning, all. Hope everybody is faring well. As we are coming to the end of the webcast, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things that that the tax exempt need to look out for. Mainly the extended due date here for our June 30s and our calendar years to July 15th. Make sure if you are a calendar year and you're not going to be able to file your return by July 15th, do your extension. Don't get caught on severe penalties for non-filing. Next slide. Also with the CARES Act, remember the enhancements there as far as the above the line deduction of $300 for our non-itemizers. For our itemizers, the AGI limit has gone up to 100%, and that will not be hard to achieve. So stay in front of our donors, make sure that they know we need their help, and you can get an itemized deduction for your contributions. Also, these enhanced deductions are cash to 501c3 organizations. Next. Businesses, again, an increase for food inventory contributions. Corporations, their donation is up from 10% to 25%. And make sure you're looking at your limitations, business owners. And when you're pitching to business owners, make sure they understand the new limitations. Very, very good deductions. Also, again, just to highlight the changes to unrelated business income, this 80% limitation that was put in by the Tax Cuts Jobs Act is gone for our years 19 and 20. Also, the AMT credits have been accelerated, and the business interest limits from 30 to 50%, and the excess loss limitations have been deferred out till 2021. So if you have filed your 19 returns, look to amend as soon as possible. If you haven't, make sure you're looking at these provisions and these increased deductions to get money back into the organization. The payroll credits, again, make sure you're discussing these credits internally. Make sure your staff is telling you when they're out sick, what they're out sick for, especially for the sick leave and the family leave. Make sure if you've got the PPP loan, you understand that you can't use the same wages for the retention credit and the deferral of the payroll taxes. So again, just knowledge is key, and communications with the HR and payroll departments and your employees. Some new proposed legislation on the HEROES Act. This is very controversial act. It has some trench, but it doesn't look like it's going to go far. But there's still a lot of people encouraging our legislators to pass some of these things. So they want to bump up the $300 above the line deduction to $2,000, and that could be claimed on 2019 returns as well as 2020. They'd like to eliminate the state and local tax deduction cap of $10,000 for years 19, 20, 21. You know, that's a heavy deduction that we're missing out in the Northeast, Northwest. And then the last, they want to take out the PPP loan forgiveness piece where it comes to delaying the payment of the payroll taxes. So if you've got the PPP, you can't defer the payroll taxes. So that would be for years 21 and 20. On IRS Notice 2020-32, it gave guidance on the deductibility of the PPP expenses. This is huge for our for-profit clients. Our nonprofits, it's not as big unless you're subject to unrelated business income. In that case, this is going to be a basic M1 or non-deductible expense, so it does not reduce your unrelated business income. Proposed legislations would allow those expenses, so in effect, it'll be a double dip to be able to deduct those and get loan forgiveness. So that's proposed. Also, the SALT workarounds. There are states that have come up with a pass-through entity tax for, again, for our for-profit clients. The states, Connecticut, Louisiana, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and the latest, Maryland. Again, by taking deductions on the federal and getting credits on the states, it does keep money in the entity as a deduction, and we can basically have more money to donate. Last, the telecommuting. New Jersey has been very, very vocal on not having entities, tax exempt entities, for-profit entities, having nexus for their employees telecommuting from home when they're out of state. Pennsylvania also has taken a stance on this as well. So you basically don't have to do payroll taxes. You don't have to register in non-resident states just because your employee is working from home. These are current rules in effect. Once we go past the next year, we don't know what's going to happen there. As you know, state and local laws are all over the place. Nexus is all over the place. So we have to pay close attention to making sure that we're adhering to all of the payroll tax requirements for other states. So stay tuned on this. We're going to have more information on this as this pandemic continues to unfold. With that, we'll go back to Todd and the poll question.
Okay, poll number 4. Here's your last poll, folks. Would you rather fight 1,000 one-pound ducks or one 1,000-pound duck? So the first one is 1,000 one-pound ducks or one 1,000-pound ducks. Polling is open and start. It's very interesting. I think a one 1,000-pound duck is a pretty large duck. So, okay, the polling is coming in. People are voting. Very exciting. I don't know when we would have this opportunity to fight 1,000 one-pound ducks. I certainly wouldn't want to be looking forward to that. That wouldn't be something that's on my bucket list, is to fight a 1,000-pound duck or 1,000 one-pound ducks. That's definitely not in it. And we'll stop there. And the results are, wow. So most people would rather fight one 1,000-pound duck. Very good. Okay. So taking it to the last section, which is an open discussion, folks, there was no questions that came in, which is fine. I just want to speak very briefly on a few quick things. If you did receive the PPP loan and you are now looking to get some guidance on forgiveness, make sure that you tune in on our weekly update, which is actually tomorrow at 10 o'clock. There are some nuances concerning not-for-profits that I've been advising clients. And if you have any specific questions for us, you can actually send the email to the COVID-19 at sacsllp.com. And the other thing I just want to mention to you is that we are offering to anyone on the call, whether you are a client or not a client, a complimentary technology assessment with Dr. Carl, who made his presentation today, especially in these difficult times. Just, you could see there, you can either email info@s2solutions.tech or visit s2solutions.tech, or you can also just send the email to covid19@sacsllp.com. Remember to say that you were on the webinar, and happy to also point tomorrow's webinar, which I just mentioned, at 10 a.m. Thank you so much for being with us in our part 2. We will be coming out with a part 3. Tune in and have a great day. Stay safe and also stay happy, folks.